So let's go to the next part of the talk. I'm going to close the chat box for some time and let's go to the next part. We have an hour more. And let me start with this idea of applying what we have just now said a little bit, right? I know that you guys have had the talk with the discussion with Suniti madam, just excuse me. And in the discussion, you know that there are ways in which you can search PubMed. But let's say that, I mean, you guys all know about COVID, and COVID is all around the place right now. And there is a new drug which is around, and the new drug is, or the new therapy that you're trying to plan to give, and the new therapy is tocilizumab, right? Now, again, for the record, I'm not teaching you COVID. I'm not even telling you that which drugs works and which drug does not work. I'm just trying to demonstrate what I just now showed you and trying to show you how that works out in real world. How all of this, what we have learned, is going to help us in the real world, right? So let's say my question is tocilizumab something which can help in COVID? I don't know what's the role of tocilizumab in COVID, right? I repeat, I'm not teaching you COVID. I'm not teaching you therapies of COVID. I'm just telling you example. How do I search the literature? So if I try to do that, I have two options. I hope you can see my screen over here, right? I have two options. I might go to Google and I might ask Google that tell me about tocilizumab, not India, use in COVID. Let's see what it. Well, when I do that, now all of you know this, it can show me a variety of results. It can start with Medscape. It tells me about Medscape, maybe because most of the people were searching Medscape. And it can go all over the place. It can tell me some articles coming out of, I don't know where, this is from PubMed. It could tell me an article coming from Lancet, so on and so forth, right? It can tell me some articles which have just been registered, but maybe have not been done. It might also tell me about some pharma news, which I mean, some newspaper news, which I'm not really interested in. I could also do this, that I could go to PubMed, which is what I would prefer to do. That I go to PubMed and here I type in tocilizumab. And well, since most people have been searching about it, I guess it also has an auto search. It is telling me tocilizumab and COVID. What happens about it? Let's search. Right now, when I do this, now again, a better way to do this is what Vasumati madam has taught you. I'm not saying that this is how you do it. I'm just saying this is how I do it, because there are ways in which I would just do it so that it's helpful to me at this point. So just a minute, yeah. Now, when I do this, you can see on this side that there are a variety of things that I could be interested in. Forget the research that, and forget the results that you have got. Look at the filters that you have got. These are the same filters, types of filters that we were talking about, right? So the best thing would be someone gives me a meta-analysis or a systematic review. So let's see if there is a systematic review over here. Oh, there is no systematic review. So if there is no systematic review, should I believe it? Now we have said that the best level of evidence is systematic review, but systematic review nahi hai. Now I guess most of you know why systematic review is not there, because well, maybe enough data has not been collected for anybody to write a systematic review on it. I can't say now I will not use tocilizumab. I might still want to use tocilizumab. So let's go lower down into the evidence. Now I will say, okay, forget systematic review. Let's just reset all the filters and say that I'm assuming systematic review nahi hai, to meta-analysis bhi nahi. I could have searched that. I have searched it, so I know it's not there. Let me search if there are randomized control trials. Ye to hona chahiye na. Oh, there is no randomized control trial as well. If there is no randomized control trial, you do know that in this chart, where are you right now for COVID? You are not here. You're neither here, right? Now what you have is this. Understand, this is how science goes ahead. We are still new in this topic. That doesn't mean I'm going to refute. I'm not going to say it doesn't work. I'm saying I need better evidence, right? I will use it according to my judgment also, but I need better evidence. So let's reset. Now what I'm going to do is, well, if you cannot tell me about meta-analysis, randomized control trials, reviews, or systematic, this wouldn't be there. So let me search what are the clinical trials which are. Well, technically it is not even categorizing anything as clinical trials. Neil, you have to mute yourself. Yeah, thank you. Right. So now let's see finally what is then available. If they don't have an RCT, if they don't have clinical trials also, then what do they have? Let's see the first three ones so that we figure out. I mean, I'm not searched very well, so let's see the first three ones. Let's see the first one, right? The first article that it is showing me is this. It is showing me tocilizumab treatment in COVID-19, a single center experience. Let me read this through and then I'll have a question for you. So again, let me just read this through. I'm going to zoom in so that we are all able to see it. Okay. So the abstract, I don't have the full article. I could open it up, but I don't want to. Tocilizumab is a monoclonal antibody, so and so. It works in COVID for cytokine storm. Probably in the present study, we aim to discuss the treatment response in these patients. The demographic treatment laboratory parameters before and after tocilizumab therapy and clinical outcomes were retrospectively assessed. Total 15 patients. Look at the sample size. Total 15 patients were included. 2 of them were moderately ill, 6 were so, 7 were so. Tocilizumab was used in combination with methylprednisolone in 8 patients, and 5 of them received the injection twice or more. Although tocilizumab treatment ameliorated the risk, increased CRP in all patients, for the 4 critically ill patients who received one single dose, 3 of them still died, and the CRP in the rest, 1 of them failed to return to normal, with the clinical outcome of disease aggravation. Serum interleukin 6 tended to further spike firstly and then decrease after tocilizumab in 10 patients. A persistent and dramatic increase in interleukin 6 was observed in 4 patients who failed therapy. Tocilizumab appeared to be effective. Now, God knows why they're saying it appeared to be effective, but yes, they believe it is appeared to be effective in effective option in COVID-19 with the risk of cytokine storm. And for these critically ill patients, elevated interleukin 6, repeated dose of tocilizumab is recommended. Fair enough. I mean, that's fine. That's what they have done. My question to you is, and I would want to see your answer in the chat box, where do you think this trial is in your pyramid? It is not this, it is not this, that you know. What do you think is it? Right? Please answer in the chat box. What do you think is this trial? Make your answer to all panelists and attendees. What do you think has happened here? What have they done? Okay. So we started with the case report, then I have all the answers coming as case series, then case report, then case report, then case series. Case series. Is it a one case? No, it's not one case. If it's not one case, it is not a case report, it is a case series, right? It's a case series. Now, should I believe it? Should I believe it? Right? I would like to see your answers for that. So should you believe it? Yes, no. You could say a yes or you could say a no. Should I believe it? Should I not believe it? So yes or no? We have got 4 no's, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 no's, then 2 yes, then more evidence, then no, no, then no, no, then again a no. So do we believe it or don't we believe it? Right? I'm not against the authors, absolutely no. I mean no disrespect to the authors, and I know you don't mean it either. And I'm not teaching you COVID. I repeat, I keep on saying this. I'm not teaching you COVID. Right? Please don't extrapolate. COVID is something that many people are, of course, rightly afraid of right now, and I'm not trying to teach you that. Right? Can't be decided. Yes, till there is more studies. Now we have a yes. Not yet. Okay, that's diplomatic. Nice answer. Right? So what should we do? अच्छा एक बात बताओ, आप लोगों ने कितने कोविड के पेशेंट देखे? Some of you might have done COVID duties, some might have, some might not have. मैंने कितने कोविड के पेशेंट देखे? ट्रीट किए, देखे हैं कुछ, but ट्रीट कितने किए? 0. I have not treated COVID patients yet. Don't you think it would be a good idea to ask someone who has done it? Don't you think I can ask this question right now to maybe the head of department of your medical college where there are so many COVID patients? I could, right? I could also take an expert opinion, right? So please make a note of this. If you're writing this down, please understand. It's a very subjective decision at this moment. If this was an established disease with other treatment options, answer is no. I will not believe it, right? But you saw there was nothing better available. If there was something better available, I would have gone for it, right? If there was something higher up available, I would have gone for it. But since there is nothing better available, how will you do the next trial if you don't believe this? If you don't believe this, you will not enroll patients for this trial. You will not do this trial and you will not go here. Tocilizumab will never climb up if you don't believe here. They have shown that some people are doing fine. As of now, this is my best level of evidence. I will believe it. And to believe it, at this level, I will have to bring in the experts. I would have to ask the experts, what do you think? Right? And you might be surprised how many experts actually vouch for it and say, I believe it. Right? So I repeat, it is today the highest level of evidence. You will have no other option but to go ahead and believe it. If you don't believe it, it is your responsibility to do the next trial. If you do believe it, it is still your responsibility to do the next trial. See, most of the hospitals right now are enrolling patients into their trial designs so that they do the next level cohort study or maybe a randomized control trial or whatever that they can do. They are going to do it because this is what they believe in. They will take the evidence further. So please don't say no. The answer is no, that I would not want to believe a case control if I have a better study. I don't have a better study. If I don't have a better study, the answer is yes, I will believe it today because there is nothing else. What about a sample size of 15? Well, look for bigger sample sizes. That's fine, no? And you'll be surprised to see that this is not the best trial. I mean, this is not the only trial which has come up. I just want to quickly show this to you that if I look at this Lancet article, there was a Lancet article here. Now the Lancet article has gone ahead and it has shown us something else. So if you look at the Lancet article, look at the sample size. They have taken 1,300 patients. They did a retrospective observational cohort study, and they have taken a lot of patients, and they have seen up to 1,300 patients. So that means you can have other types of study designs now. So the cohort studies have started coming in. The case control studies have started coming in. The RCTs will come in. So I will believe the highest level of evidence that I get, but I should search it. If I don't find anything higher than that, I will trust the highest that has come as of now, right? So that kind of brings home the point. I hope that it's not to be seen in isolation. I can't say systematic review nahi to main malunga nahi. I have to say whatever is the best today, I will believe in that, right? Okay. Now with that, let's move on to the article that we are going to read. And let's see how do we actually read an article. Now there were some questions I have asked you that if you have got those questions, the questions were, will you apply this such criteria? I mean, if you believe in that trial, will you apply it to another patient, so on and so forth. So let's just go there. Yeah. So this is the trial that I'm going to spend the next 40 minutes kind of discussing with you. How do we read a trial? Now, when you read a trial, there are multiple things that you will have to see, right? I'll quickly try to summarize what those things are. The first thing that you would want to see is where is it published? Very important, right? Now, if you look at this, this has been published. You can see the reference over here. This has been published in BMJ. BMJ is the British Medical Journal. BMJ is a respected journal. So how do I know what is a respected journal and what is not a respected journal? Well, you would know it when you enter the field that you're working in. That's the easiest answer. So if you are someone who's working in medicine, you will know that the New England Journal of Medicine, NEJM. Now I want you to follow, I would want all of you to go back and follow the Facebook page of New England Journal of Medicine. They are considered the best in the world. Today in medicine, they are the best. Please follow their Facebook page. You'll get interesting updates from them. They have all the COVID trials are free available on their website also. So you can enroll also, you can subscribe to NEJM. So best is NEJM, Lancet is the second best. Then there are others like Annals of Internal Medicine, JAMA, then you have the BMJ. These are all respected journals. What do I really mean by respected journal? Just because I like it? Not so. There is something known as impact factor. When a journal is published, when an article is published in a journal, how much would it change the practice of people who read it? If something is published in a journal of some XYZ country in some XYZ part of the globe, and I just read it, I'm like, "Okay, inhone publish kiya, but what do I care? I might not." But if NEJM publishes it, well, the world is going to listen to it, right? If NEJM publishes it, Harrison is going to take that in the next edition and put it over there. So NEJM will change practices across the world. Something published in NEJM, people trust that. The people who read NEJM, the people who review papers in NEJM, they are the people that the world thinks are experts in that field. So we believe what NEJM writes. That is called the impact factor. NEJM has the highest impact factor. followed by Lancet. They have impact factors in 2 digits. Rest of them have impact factors in 1 digit, but we still believe them, right? So when you enter a field, now I can't name what is the best journal in obstetrics. I can't name what is the best journal in dermatology. I won't know that. So a lot of times students send us questions, which journal should I send the paper to? Well, it depends on what have you written, have they published that in the past, and are they interested in it. But when I'm reading it, I need to have some idea about what are the good journals in that particular branch, right? You should know about the ones that I mentioned. The first thing is it a good journal? Well, this is BMJ, it looks like a good journal. Second thing is, what is the type of study that I'm reading? Is it a case control? Is it cohort? Is it randomized? Is it a systematic review? What is it? That directly tells you what's the level of evidence. How much should I believe it? How much bias is it carrying? Well, let's look at what is this. You can get that information from the abstract. Study design. It's a prospective, randomized, multi-center, non-inferiority trial. Beyond my scope to explain you non-inferiority today, but rest of the words, I think you already know. Prospective, it's going ahead. All randomized would be prospective. Multi-center, it has not been done at one center, multiple centers were involved. Matlab, bada sample size tha. So, well, it's a randomized control trial, looks like higher up in my evidence, I will start reading it. So first was the journal, second was what was the trial design. Third, what's the sample size? Now, depends on the question. I can't have a huge sample size for a question like COVID. 15 ka sample size for COVID, if it was published in March, I believe it. March में 15 patients इकट्ठा लाके publish करना बड़ी बात थी. 15 patients of COVID published in the month of July. I'll say नहीं, अभी तो और data आ चुका है. I will need bigger sample size. It's relative. 15 patients for a patient for a disease like Kikuchi's disease. Nobody has heard about it. Well, I'll believe it. 15 patients for coronary artery disease. I'm not going to believe it. There are so many patients. I can't judge based on 15 patients. So sample size matters. It depends on the disease. So we are talking about use of dual antiplatelet therapy in patients who have developed ST segment elevation MI and have undergone some kind of procedure. In that, let's look at the sample size. Okay, a total of 1,100 patients were enrolled in the trial, and of which 870 were randomized. Well, quite honestly speaking, if you look at other cardiology trials, you might find numbers of 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 उतने बड़े. So इसका actual sample size कम है. इस वजह से भी शायद ये BMJ में publish हुआ और NEJM में नहीं गया. ये भी एक chance हो सकता है. But 1,000 plus looks fine. I'll trust it. I'll say okay, the reasonable sample size लग रहा है. यहाँ subjectivity रहेगी. You will not know the answer unless you have read other trials in that particular spectrum. So you'll have. That's why I said that you can't design a trial out of nowhere. You need to know what's been done in that field prior. So the sample size looks good, right? Once these basic things are in place, remember, I have not yet looked at what is their conclusion. I'm not interested in what they have written in the results. I'm first interested in, should I trust what they are going to say? I'm not asking the question, what have they said? I'm not looking at the results. My question when I read an article is, should I spend my mental energy reading them at all? Are they a good journal? Are they a good trial design? Do they have sample size? Okay, अब आगे जाते हैं. ठीक है, वरना मैं आगे जाऊंगा ही. If I found that this was some God forbidden journal, I will not read it. If I find that the sample size was very pathetic, I will not read it. If I find it was non-randomized in a trial, in a setting where there should have been randomization, I would not read it. I'll just leave it, right? Now, when I go ahead, I should do PICO. Now, this is the part I would want you to write down if you're writing down by now. That when we want to study results of a trial, we should study it as PICO. What is PICO? PICO stands for population, intervention, control, outcomes or observation, right? So I should ask myself, what is the PICO of this particular paper? Paper has been published, study has been done. In that study, what was the population which was being studied? What was the control arm? What was the intervention? And what is the outcomes, right? So let's, with this background, population, intervention, control, and outcomes, let's see what our trial has done. Let's start reading the trial. Now, always remember the introduction of the trial. Now, I'm not going to read this for you. I'm going to ask you to read this by yourself. But remember, always the introduction of the trial will tell you what work has been done before this trial was done. So this is that review of literature. One of your question, a review of literature क्या होता है? Introduction में जो लिखा हुआ है वो है review of literature. They will tell you why do they need to do this trial? Why did they think of doing this trial? If they can't convince you here, and it's your job to decide whether to get convinced or not. When you read the introduction, you might want to think, is it really required to do this trial, or is it not required to do this trial? Right? Do I have the time? I do have some time. So let me just read the introduction a little. Right? So the introduction here is the dual antiplatelet therapy, that is giving aspirin with another antiplatelet. That's called dual antiplatelet therapy. After doing PCI, has been used primarily to avoid the abrupt thrombotic closure of the vessel after stent implantation. So if I put in a stent after doing an angiography, I don't want that stent to close down, so I want to give a dual antiplatelet therapy. The recommendations have changed in the last decade, particularly after the introduction of the first generation of the drug-eluting stents. Next, I'm going to pretty much I skip the next line. The introduction of the second generation drug-eluting stent has drastically reduced the risk of stent thrombosis compared to the first generation and the bare metal stent. So what they are telling us is there have been new type of stents which have come up. The different trials and meta-analysis have shown that shorter DAPT, shorter duration of dual antiplatelet regimens with second generation drug-eluting stents are equally safe. However, the optimum duration of DAPT remains a matter of debate, and they have given references. Now it's my job to go back to these references and to find out, is it true? Are the references that they're talking about, are they really saying what they think they are saying? What they're telling me is that after introduction of a second generation stent, the DAPT duration can become shorter, is what people are saying. But how short is short, that is debated. That's what they're saying. Therefore, and if I read the further introduction, therefore I am planning to do this trial. That is what they're trying to say, right? Now I know why they are doing the trial. I should now search what is their population. Whom are they doing the trial in? For that, we need to go lower down into their methods. Sorry. Now I'm just going to zoom this out a little. Yeah. So they have study design over here. They have participant selection here. They have told you how are they measuring the outcomes over here, right? They also have told you the interventions over here. So my P is going to be in the participants. My I is going to be in the intervention. My O is going to be in the outcomes and in the results. यही outcomes results में वापस मैं देखूंगा कि उधर क्या लिखा हुआ है, ठीक है? So if I want to know the P, participant selection, the trial population consisted of STEMI patients aged between 18 to 85. That's one. So I'm just going to mark over this, and I want you to pay attention to what I'm doing right now. Just give me a second again. Neil, I'm sorry, Neil, can you just open your mute? Neil or Manali, any one of you?
Yes, sir.
Were you seeing my screen? It started showing me a message that screen wasn't shared.
No, sir, it's visible. Absolutely.
No, my screen was red when I was sharing.
Sorry, sir?
Just hold on. When I'm doing this, my screen being are you able to see the article?
Yes, sir. It's visible.
Fine. It showed me that I had stopped sharing. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, so sorry for that disruption. Neil, could you mute yourself? Thank you. Okay, so first thing is participant selection. The trial population consisted of 1, patients of STEMI who are aged 18 to 85, 2, who underwent a primary PCI with second generation stent, 3, who filled the inclusion and the exclusion criteria which are given in the table E1, right? Now these are the patients that they have enrolled. These patients were followed for the first 6 months. At the end of 6 months, if they had no symptoms, they were further randomized to decide whether they should be stopped giving DAPT or they should be given DAPT ahead, right? So I'm just going to do this. What this trial has done, is something like this. They have taken patients who have had STEMI, and after having STEMI have a PCI plus stent, and the stent is a second generation stent. These patients were given DAPT, dual antiplatelet therapy, for a period of 6 months. After 6 months, if they were healthy, now they have randomized. Now they have randomized, and they have randomized them into 2 arms. They have randomized them to continue DAPT for 6 more months. If they continue DAPT for 6 more months, that means the total DAPT becomes this 6 months plus this 6 months, 12 months, or to stop DAPT. That means they gave DAPT only for 6 months, did not give it now. The DAPT duration becomes only the 6 months that was given before them, and they continue only aspirin. DAPT is dual antiplatelet, that is aspirin plus clopidogrel or something else, but here now they are continuing only aspirin. And they are going to follow these patients over the period of next 18 or 24 months, whatever they have written in the trial. And at the end of 24 months, they are looking at the outcomes, right? Now, if you understand this, every time that you're reading a trial, you should be able to draw this for yourself. If you're able to draw this for yourself, now you know what is your, if you're able to draw this, you know now what is your P. P was the population which is being studied. This is the population which is being studied. What is your intervention? This is the intervention that has happened, that some have got DAPT, some have not got DAPT. What is your control arm? Control arm is the people who have got aspirin. And what is your outcome? This is the outcome that you're trying to see. Now, what is that outcome? We are yet to see that. But understand, you should be able to draw a diagram like this when you see a particular trial, right? Now, the good part is this trial had actually given that diagram to you. So if you go back to the trial, you'll find that they have somewhere below, yeah, they've actually told you that we took STEMI patients, we excluded so many patients, then we gave them a treatment for 6 months with DAPT, then we randomized them to get single antiplatelet or to get dual antiplatelet. So many people, we followed them for 24 months, we followed this for 24 months, and then we kind of figured it out. Now, why do I need to know all of this? Why do I need to know the P? Why do I need to know the population? Now, this is a question that I have for all of you. So I would want you to tell me, why do you need to read the population arm well? What's the utility? So in the chat box, please type down your answer. Why do I need to know the population arm? Why do I need to know the P? मुझे क्या फर्क पड़ता है? Or rather, why do I need to know the P and why do I need to know the C? But more importantly, what's the utility of P when I'm reading the journal? Power of the study, no. External validity of the study. Matlab, two of you have written this very interesting word, external validity of the study. Matlab kya? Target population, fair enough. To see if it can be applied to your patients. How? Absolutely, absolutely. So if you see the question which I had sent you, the first question was, if you believe in this trial, will you apply these results? And if you do believe in this trial, whom will you apply the results to? The answer is, you will believe, if you believe in this trial, you will apply the results only to the patients who are in the inclusion criteria, right? So please, if you're writing down again, this is a very important learning point, that when we read trials, when we read papers, if we decide to go ahead and read the paper, we say this is applicable to this particular set of patients. I can't change their inclusion criteria and say, okay, they tried in someone else, but I will use it for someone else. They tried in patient with diabetes having hypertension, but I will use it in all diabetes who don't even have hypertension. Wrong. The results are applicable only to patients who have diabetes and hypertension, if that is what was done in the trial. Now, this should answer a question that should have bothered you many times when you are reading your notebooks or your textbooks, that why is it that ACE inhibitors are given in patients who have diabetes and coronary artery disease? Why don't we give them in patients who have diabetes and maybe something else, or patients who have coronary artery disease without diabetes? Maybe why don't we prefer them? Answer to all such questions are not in pharmacology. We don't know their mechanisms and decide what to do. We look at the inclusion criteria of the trials which had tried it out, and that's how Harrison decides where is that drug preferred, right? So please make a note of this. Inclusion criteria of the trial, if the trial is successful, becomes the indication to use that drug. I repeat, inclusion criteria of the trial, if that trial is successful, becomes the indication to use that drug later on, if that trial is successful, right? So if this trial works, then the inclusion criteria is what will decide whether you want to use that trial or not. Now, that brings us to the second question. What is the hypothesis? What are they trying to really test over here, right? And that is a tough question, but I'll try in the time available to me to figure that out. And that brings us here. Now, I know we are like quite a lot of discussion has already happened, and I know I'm kind of bombarding you with a lot of words here, but this is a beautiful part. If you try to figure it out, that will make it will really make sense when you're reading journals. Now, the trial design was set to test the hypothesis that single antiplatelet therapy with aspirin after 6 months of patients of STEMI with event-free interval would be non-inferior to DABT with respect to the primary endpoint. Now, इतना बड़ा statement मतलब क्या है? बोलना क्या चाहता है author? When we start designing trials, we go to the statistician and we ask them, भैया मैं ये प्रूव करना चाहता हूँ, कैसे प्रूव करूँ? स्टैटिस्टिशियन आपको बोलेगा प्रूव क्या करना चाहते हो. ऑथर्स कह रहे हैं कि वी वांट टू प्रूव दैट वेदर यू गिव ओनली एस्पिरिन और यू गिव ड्यूअल एंटीप्लेटलेट थेरेपी, ओनली एस्पिरिन देना चलेगा. ठीक है, तो स्टैटिस्टिशियन पूछेगा अच्छा ओनली एस्पिरिन देना चलेगा, ये प्रूव करना चाहते हो? हाँ, तो तुम प्रूव करना चाहते हो सिंगल एंटीप्लेटलेट थेरेपी विल बी ओके. ओके, अगर तुम ये प्रूव करना चाहते हो तो देयर आर टू ऑप्शंस. या तो तुम प्रूव करो कि सिंगल एंटीप्लेटलेट थेरेपी इज बेटर देन ड्यूअल एंटीप्लेटलेट थेरेपी. तुम कहोगे यार सर ये प्रूव करना बहुत मुश्किल हो जाएगा कि सिंगल इज बेटर देन ड्यूअल. हाँ, मैं प्रूव कर सकता हूँ कि इट हैज लेसर साइड इफेक्ट्स, बट फिर मेरा प्राइमरी आउटकम बनाना पड़ेगा साइड इफेक्ट, और ऐसी ट्रायल कोई पढ़ना नहीं चाहता जिसका प्राइमरी आउटकम साइड इफेक्ट्स है, और शायद एथिकल क्लियरेंस भी नहीं मिलेगा कि आप साइड इफेक्ट्स के लिए ट्रायल कर रहे हैं. ठीक है, तो थोड़ा मुश्किल होगा सर, मैं वैसे वाली ट्रायल नहीं कर सकता, और अगर करूँ भी तो भी प्रूविंग दैट वन इज बेटर देन अनदर इज वेरी टफ. तो क्या तुम प्रूव करना चाहते हो कि दोनों इक्वल है? तो आप कहोगे हाँ 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 मैं प्रूव करना चाहता हूँ दोनों इक्वल है. तो स्टैटिस्टिशियन कहेगा अगर तुम प्रूव करना चाहते हो कि दोनों इक्वल है तो एक प्रॉब्लम है, तुम कोई स्कोप नहीं छोड़ रहे हो कि अगर ये इससे बेटर है तो चलेगा. तुम अगर प्रूव करना चाहते हो कि सिंगल इज इक्वल टू ड्यूअल, इन इंग्लिश लैंग्वेज इट माइट सीम कि अच्छा इफ दे आर इक्वल दैट्स अ गुड थिंग, बट इन द वर्ड ऑफ स्टैटिस्टिक्स जब हाइपोथेसिस जनरेशन का टाइम आएगा तो स्टैटिस्टिशियन कहेगा इफ यू वांट टू प्रूव दैट दे आर इक्वल, your null hypothesis, the opposite of this will be that they are not equal. Not equal मतलब it could be superior or it could be inferior. अगर inferior है तो तुमको कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ा, तुम जो प्रूव करना चाहते थे ऐसे भी प्रूव नहीं हुआ. बट अगर सच में तुम्हारा ड्रग सुपीरियर था तो भी तुम्हारा ट्रायल फेल कर जाएगा, बिकॉज जो डिजाइन में बनाऊंगा वो कहेगा सुपीरियर भी नहीं चलता, सिर्फ इक्वली चलता है. दैट वुड बी स्टूपिड. तुम कहोगे सर ऐसे कैसे चलेगा? सुपीरियर अगर मैंने गलती से प्रूव कर दिया तो अच्छी बात है, सुपीरियर तो चलना चाहिए. तो स्टैटिस्टिशियन कहेगा अच्छा बेटा तो तू यू डोंट वांट टू प्रूव, यू थिंक यू कांट प्रूव योर ड्रग इज सुपीरियर, बट यू आर ओके इफ यू प्रूव इट इज सुपीरियर. तुम कहोगे हाँ सर दैट इज एग्जैक्टली व्हाट आई एम सेइंग कि आई एम नॉट श्योर वेदर आई कैन प्रूव इट इज सुपीरियर, बट अगर सुपीरियर है तो अच्छी बात है. देन द स्टैटिस्टिशियन विल से दैट इफ योर ड्रग इज इक्वल, तुमको भी चलता है. तुम कहोगे हाँ हाँ दोनों स्ट्रेटजी इक्वल है तो भी चलेगा. द स्टैटिस्टिशियन विल देन से दैट मींस द ओनली थिंग दैट यू वांट टू से इज इट इज नॉट इंफीरियर. तुम कहोगे yes sir, that's exactly what I want to say, that it is not inferior. So there are three types of trial designs now. Three types of trial designs which you will have to tell your statistician what do you want to prove, right? Now don't write this part, or maybe if you want write it at the end of it. This is your standard therapy. In this case the standard therapy is dual antiplatelet therapy. The statistician is asking you, do you want to prove it is superior, do you want to prove it is equal within this much range, or do you want to prove that yours is inferior? You are telling the statistician, sir I want to prove that whatever my drug is either here or here or here or here, not here. Such a trial design is called a non-inferiority trial design. Such a trial design is called a non-inferiority trial design. A non-inferiority trial design means that all you have proven is your drug, the green line, is not inferior to the standard drug, the purple line. But then not inferior बोलते वक्त the next question will be, दोनों exactly same तो नहीं हो सकते ना. अब ये दोनों भी तो non inferior है या inferior है, ये और ये line ये तो superior है. Let me call this line B, let me call this line C, let me call this line A. तो आप कहोगे A से B तो superior है, A से C तो inferior है, but तुम कहोगे सर इतना inferior चलता है. मतलब अगर किसी का ब्लड प्रेशर 140 की जगह 138 है तो चलता है. तो स्टैटिस्टिशियन तुम्हें पूछेगा था कितना ब्लड प्रेशर चलता है, 140 और 138 सेम है क्या? तुम कहोगे हाँ सर क्लिनिकली तो 140 और 138 मेरे लिए सेम है. तो स्टैटिस्टिशियन पूछेगा 140 और 130 तुम्हारे लिए सेम है क्या क्लिनिकली? तो तुम कहोगे हाँ सर कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता. स्टैटिस्टिशियन पूछेगा 130 और 110 तुम्हारे लिए सेम है क्या? तुम लोग कैसे सर, ऐसा नहीं चलता. 130 और 110 में फर्क है, दोनों पेशेंट अलग होते हैं. ये मेरा जजमेंट है जो मैं स्टैटिस्टिशियन को बता रहा हूँ. स्टैटिस्टिशियन इसको यूज करेगा और बोलेगा अच्छा तो तुम कहते हो कि 130 और 110 अलग है, बट 130 एंड मे बी 125 सेम है. 120 नहीं 125 यस. तो मैं काम करता हूं कि मैं कहता हूं एक मार्जिन बना देते हैं 125 को. पे अटेंशन, एक मार्जिन बना देते हैं 125 को और कहते हैं योर ड्रग, दैट इज योर ग्रीन लाइंस, is not inferior to the standard therapy, that is your A or that is this purple line, by a margin of more than this much. इससे ज्यादा खराब नहीं. अगर तुम्हारा ड्रग ब्लड प्रेशर 130 ला सकता है तो हमारा ड्रग ब्लड प्रेशर 125 के नीचे तो नहीं लाएगा. 130 ला सकता है, 130 से ज्यादा भी ला सकता है, बट उससे कम नहीं लाएगा. That means what we have done is we have created a non-inferiority trial with a margin known as delta. Right? Now, if this is what you want to prove, iska opposite is your null hypothesis. Null hypothesis is that your drug is worse than the standard drug, more than the margin. Right? So let's go back to the margin. So I'm just going to hold on over here. I'm just going to hold on over here. I am going to, what I'm going to take at this point. Anybody wants me to repeat what I just now said? Just say yes. I'm going to take this up. So anybody wants me to repeat what I just now said? Anybody wants me to repeat what I just now said? Oh, there are people attending. Yeah, there are people attending. Okay, so I'm just quickly going to repeat this. Pay attention, right? If you figure this out, you have kind of hit a jackpot today, right? You are going to read this word non-inferiority multiple times. You're going to read this word non-inferiority multiple times. I'm assuming you know what is null hypothesis, right? I'm not going into explaining what is null hypothesis. I'm explaining what is the hypothesis. Uska ulta is null hypothesis. Is tarah se main ja raha hu. I hope you know what is the null hypothesis, right? So now I go back. Pay attention. Pay attention. We can have three types of trials. When you have two comparator arms, the comparator arm, your intervention arm is the green line, your standard therapy is the purple line. You can have three types of trials. You can try to prove that your intervention is superior to the standard of care. Such trials are very difficult to do because if you want to prove this, you need very huge sample sizes, and very often it is still not possible to prove that your drug is superior. Imagine someone trying to now prove that there is a new type of insulin which is better than regular insulin. You can't prove that. You can't prove that glargine is better than regular insulin. You might say that, okay, it is equal to regular insulin, but you can't prove that glargine is better than. So proving something is better has become very difficult because a lot of drugs are now available which are good. In the past, it was possible. Now it's not possible. Proving something is equal is tricky because if you try to prove something is equal in not in terms of English, but in terms of statistics. In terms of statistics, if I try to prove that something is equal, statistician ना इधर भी एक margin बना देगा और बोलेगा कि तुम्हारा जो green line है, it has to be inside this. इधर गया not accepted, इधर गया तो भी not accepted. ये तुमको नहीं चलेगा. तुम बोलोगे सर ऐसा कैसा? ये नहीं चलेगा. If I end up on this side, if I actually show at the end of my trial that I'm better, I should get the chance to say I'm better. I'm not okay with this. You can't tell me that you have to prove it is only equal, not less, not more. That is too stringent. I will not accept. So equivalence trials are also not done. What is done is non-inferiority trial. Non-inferiority trial मतलब मैं ये prove करना चाहता हूँ मैं इससे खराब नहीं हूँ, मैं इसके जैसा हूँ या उससे बेटर हूँ वो तुम डिसाइड करो. ठीक है. मैं better भी हो सकता हूँ, मैं claim नहीं करूंगा, I'll be modest, I will not claim because I'm not powered to claim that. My sample size will come down as I come down. So I will work with a lesser sample size and I'm happy to prove that I'm not inferior. I am either equal or better. So that's a non-inferiority trial. बट नॉन इंफीरियरिटी ट्रायल करते वक्त स्टैटिस्टिशियन ये भी पूछेगा नॉन इंफीरियर का मतलब क्या है. अगर बाय चांस मैं ब्लड प्रेशर का एग्जांपल लूं या मोर्टेलिटी का एग्जांपल लूं, तो अगर तुम कहना चाहते हो कि यहाँ मोर्टेलिटी 10% है तो यहाँ पे एग्जैक्ट 10% होनी चाहिए या 9.8 भी चलेगा, तुम कहोगे 9.8 और 10 मोर्टेलिटी ये इस पर्टिकुलर डिसीज के लिए चलता है. सो नील हैज आस्क्ड द क्वेश्चन, ये कौन डिसाइड करता है? ये ट्रायल जो कर रहा है वो डिसाइड करता है, उसका एक्सपीरियंस डिसाइड करता है. आज से पहले इस फील्ड में क्या ट्रायल्स हुए वो डिसाइड करता है. Many factors will decide it, but primarily it is you, the author. You will have to stand and tell the world why did you decide that margin. If you take a foolish margin, people will come and criticize you and say कि तुम तो non-realistic trial कर रहे थे, तुम दिखाना चाहते थे कि 140 का blood pressure और 100 का blood pressure में कोई फर्क ही नहीं है. You're stupid. No one wants to tell the world that they are stupid. So people don't take such big margins. They keep the margin reasonable. अगर तुम मुझे कहोगे 140 और 135 के blood pressure में बहुत फर्क नहीं है, मैं मान जाऊंगा. तुम अगर मुझे मनाना चाहते हो 140 और 120 के ब्लड प्रेशर में कोई फर्क नहीं है, मैं नहीं मानने वाला, मैं तुम्हारी ट्रायल को क्रिटिसाइज करूंगा. राइट, ये तुम भी जानते हो, तो तुम ऐसा नहीं करोगे, इज व्हाट वी आर अज्यूमिंग. बट आई विल स्टिल हैव टू रीड योर डेल्टा वेरी केयरफुली. बट अज्यूमिंग यू अंडरस्टैंड हाउ टू मेक अ डेल्टा, व्हाट यू टेल द वर्ल्ड इज माय आउटकम is not worse from the standard therapy more than a particular margin. अगर तुम्हारा ब्लड प्रेशर 140 है तो मेरा 5 का मार्जिन रखते हैं, 135 से कम तो ब्लड प्रेशर नहीं है. That is what you are trying to tell me, right? If that is your hypothesis, that is what you want to prove, that is your test hypothesis, that you are not inferior than a margin of so much, then what is your null hypothesis? Your null hypothesis is that you are worse than the standard more than a margin of so much. That means you are somewhere over here is your null hypothesis. You are not somewhere over here. You are somewhere over here is your actual hypothesis, right? If you can discard the null hypothesis, you have a significant result. If you can discard the null hypothesis, you have a significant result, or you have an acceptable result. Is this clear? Right? Now, with that understanding, let us go back to our article. The trial was designed to test the hypothesis that SAPT would be non-inferior to DAPT. Matlab, the trial was designed to say that if this is, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw it vertically. If this is DAPT, going over here is being better, superior, going over here is poorer or inferior, then what you want to prove is I am not inferior to DAPT. मतलब मैं इस तरफ नहीं हूं, ठीक है. We estimated the hazard ratio. Hazard ratio is like the risk ratio, just a negative connotation because their outcome that they're looking at is also hazardous. So we are looking at we estimated the hazard ratio of the primary endpoint in the treatment and the control arm using some model. I'm not going to this part. And a predefined non-inferiority margin of 1.66 was used in this trial, right? So they decided that the margin over here is, if this is 1, this is 1.66 because they are using ratios. Ratios will always be compared as 1. Remember, मैंने थोड़ा टाइम पहले कहा था, odds ratio of more than 1, risk ratio of more than 1 shows that one is superior, another is inferior, right? So they said कि इससे खराब तो हम लोग नहीं है. They are trying to prove that whatever the result is over here, over here, over here, but not crossing this particular line of 1.66. Is this clear? Right? This is the result. The brown one is the result of SAPT. I would want you to draw this diagram. Please draw this diagram if you are still copying down. Draw this diagram. And when you revise what I've said just now, you might want to go back to this part. So draw this diagram of a non-inferiority trial. This is what has been done in this particular study, right? There is a lot of talk about confidence interval over here. Beautiful idea, but really beyond the time for us. So those of you interested in reading, in understanding this, please make a note of this. What you have drawn over here, this diagram that I've drawn is the diagram of confidence interval. So you can actually go back and read what this means, that the confidence interval should not cross this margin. Right? If the brown one and the blue one overlap, then they are not different. If they are not different, the p-value will be less than will be more than 0.05. If they are significantly different, the p-value would be more than less than 0.05, right? So the p-value will also have to be defined based on whatever has been the trial design. They will have to decide the p-value is what for which side of the story, right? So coming back to the question that I had sent to you, what is the null hypothesis of this? The null hypothesis for this is that single antiplatelet therapy is worse than dual antiplatelet therapy by a hazard ratio of more than 1.66. Right? They've also explained over here that non-inferiority of SAPT will be concluded if the estimated confidence interval 95 lies entirely below this margin. If it is entirely on this side, they will accept it as this is not bad. Okay, lot of talk. So I repeat what I've said. We need to look for population. We need to look for intervention. This was the part where I'm looking for the intervention. We need to look for control. Now we have seen what the control is. Last part of the story, we need to look for outcome. So I'm going there now. We need to look at what was the outcome that they were trying to study. And that brings me here. The primary outcome of this trial is a patient-oriented composite outcome of all-cause mortality, any MI, any revascularization, stroke, or thrombosis, or bleeding in the 18 months following up from randomization. So they want to show that all of this together, net result of all of this, is not worse if the patient was given SAPT versus DAPT. That is what they are trying to prove. For anything else, the result of this trial should be taken with a pinch of salt. So there are a lot of secondary outcomes, and that is what you should take with a pinch of salt, right? Okay, so with that, I have answered two of the questions that I had asked you. One is, will you believe in this? If you believe in this, what is the sample? What is the application? The application is for the P, for the population. Second, I'd ask you, what is the null hypothesis? And that is the null hypothesis that I just now told you. Last part of the story, I had asked you, do you believe that what they have found is something that they set out to find? Let's go to the results, and I will end my story over here. Okay, I think someone joined in. Okay, so let's go to the results. Okay, I think these are the results. Yes. So the primary outcome during the 18 months after randomization, all of this was 4.8% in the SAPT group and 6.6% in the DAPT group. The hazard ratio was 0.7 with a confidence interval of 0.41 to 0.41 to 1.27, and they did not want to cross 1.66. Remember, if they would have crossed 1.66, I'm going to draw this again. I'm going to draw on top of the paper over here. Pay attention. Sorry. If this is DAPT, they are saying the confidence interval, the hazard ratio confidence interval is 0.7 with a margin of 0.41 to 1. So they are coming as, I should have drawn it here, and diagram is not completely to the graph, to the chart, sorry. Assuming that 0 is over here and this is 1. So 1.27 to 0.42 is their confidence interval. Remember, if they were always going to be on this side, they are not inferior. If they had crossed over onto this side, they would have been inferior, right? If they would have crossed over on this side, if they had crossed the value of 1.66, that is what they are written above also, then they would have been inferior. This is a study which is not inferior because they have not crossed this. Now when they take the p-value of this, when they compare this and they take the p-value, that p-value for non-inferiority is 0.004. We wanted a p-value of less than 0.05 as significant, and the p-value for non-inferiority for comparing these two is 0.04. That means they are not come here by chance, they are actually proving what they wanted to prove, right? So the primary outcome is successfully proven that in this group of patients who have the following criteria, who have been 6 months taken into this and then randomized, if you test them for non-inferiority, then one arm is not inferior to another arm. It is not bad to give them a single antiplatelet therapy versus dual antiplatelet therapy. They could be safer, they could be otherwise, but net overall for the patient, they are equal. They are not inferior rather. They could be superior, but they are not inferior. Would I want to trust this? Well, that depends on other trials on this question. If there has been no other trial on this and I'm convinced with this data, I can use this data. If there has been other trials on this, I would want to look at a systematic review or meta-analysis to answer that question. Okay, I guess that the last part of what I've said is something which might be a little heavy duty. And if it has been so, I apologize. But if there are questions now, I would like to take. The question I have is, while writing discussion and review of literature, what is the difference in the paper? Review of literature is what happened in the past. Review of literature is what I do before I tell the world about what I am planning to do. So review of literature is like, I have read, people have done this, people have done that, people have done this, but this is an area which they have not worked on. So I will work there. That is review of literature. It ends on to telling the world why you are doing what you are doing. Discussion is after you have done your work, told the world about your work, told the world about your results, and then telling the world these results matter because let's discuss them out. Now we are comparing your results to what has been done in the past. Your results, you already have the results written now. So review of literature is what you write before you do the protocol or before you start talking about your work, and discussion is what you write afterwards. Both of them will include you to go through the review of literature in the sense of reading internet and reading PubMed, but they are different because where you write them in the paper are two different areas. I hope that made sense. Okay, okay, I'll start with the question asked by Samira. Isn't the drug better if it reduces the BP to 130 compared to 135 by the standard drug? Why is the forming of in inferiority delta margin? Why is that forming the inferiority delta margin? That's your choice. That's your choice. Understand, whether 130 and 135 are different is for you to decide. The statistician will ask you, तुम बताओ कि कितना चलता है, ठीक है? Typically, that is what is done clinically. Whether 130 and 135 are acceptable or not acceptable is not for the statistician to decide, and it will change from case to case. If you are dealing with something like, let's say, these pressures have been shown in the previous trial that 135 or 130 can change the outcomes in the retinopathy, hypertensive retinopathy, well, then you can't take a delta like that. But if it has been shown that 130 versus 120 is what changes the outcomes, you can say, okay, 125 is not changing the outcome in any of the previous trial, I can safely put a delta margin over there. You will need a margin. You will need a margin because you can't get exactly 130 by standard and exactly 130 by the new drug. You can't get that. So you need a margin, right? How much is the margin is for you to decide. Why are we deciding margin with respect to two being equal? How will you decide equal? What is equal? So again, see, statistics में ना आप कभी भी कोई भी statistician इस चीज को नहीं मानेगा कि if I try 2 drugs, they will give me exactly same blood pressure. What happen? If I try 2 drugs, exactly same number of people will die. So let me bring this point home by looking over here. The major bleeding or whatever, the major outcomes were 4.8% in SAPT group and 6.6% in DAPT group. If 4.8 or 6.6 में कितना फर्क है? I don't know. I don't know what this means, right? I can't say how much this means. I will have to look at the previous data and decide in the previous data what was a clinically meaningful difference between the two, right? Now, I get what your questions are. Some people might play with the delta just to show that, well, I'm not inferior, but they can be caught. They can be caught by other peers who will say, you set the delta too low. अगर आपने डेल्टा बहुत नीचे रखा है तो ये दोनों कभी भी एक दूसरे के सिमिलर ही दिखते रहेंगे, बिकॉज यू मेड द डेल्टा टू फार अवे, राइट? So people will look at your delta carefully. You look at this article and you'll see how much time he has given, how much space he has given in his article to explain what delta is, right? So that should answer your question why delta matters so much to them. What is the difference between margin and confidence interval? Beyond the scope of this lecture to answer, because they are completely different. कोई संबंध नहीं है. The margin, the delta margin, is what you decide before you start the trial. The delta margin is what you decided कि इससे खराब होगा तो हम एक्सेप्ट नहीं करेंगे, तो हम कहेंगे खराब ही है सच में, ठीक है. इसके अंदर रहेगा तो हम कहेंगे सेम है या अच्छा भी हो सकता है ऊपर गया तो, बट इससे खराब नहीं होना चाहिए तुम्हारा रिजल्ट नए ड्रग का. दैट इज द मार्जिन. Confidence interval, please go back to the lecture where confidence interval has been discussed with you. Confidence interval tells me when you get the result, that result 95% times its true value is within that range, right? That is different from the margin that you have said. 95% times the true value is within that range. That is confidence interval. Please read that confidence interval separately. That tells you how much do you rely on your data, and this tells you below which will you actually separate inferior and non-inferior. Sorry, equal and non-inferior. For the primary outcome, will looking at the hazard ratio and the confidence interval be enough to interpret the test? Answer is yes. How do we use the p-value of 0.26 to interpret the same case? If your p-value is, so the problem with this particular trial was, or rather the reason I wanted to read this trial was, if you look at the p-value only, then you are missing the point. You don't want to prove that p-value is less than 0.05 is equal to significance. Significance and non-significance depends on what did you want to prove. You wanted to prove that they are equal. If they are significantly different, you never wanted to prove that. You wanted to prove that they are actually equal. You wanted to prove that both of them are same as each other, not less than each other. If they were very different, you would have got a p-value which was less than 0.05. So here, confidence interval gives you a much better visual analysis of what really is happening. If you pay attention to the diagram of blue and brown that I had drawn, that if you are showing that both of them are same, they are non-inferior. But if you say that both of them are different, p-value to less than 0.005 ho jayegi, but you are not actually showing that they are significantly good results, they are actually bad results that you have got. Then जो hazard ratio आ रहा है non-inferiority के लिए, उस margins को compare करने का जब p-value निकाला जा रहा है, that is what you take. 0.004 जो आया, जो मैंने last में दिखाया, that is the p-value which might still give you the same meaning, right? So is it always safe to choose a non-inferiority trial in RCT than superiority trial? It's not safe, it is easier. Superiority trial is better than non-inferiority trial if you can get the result. Problem with superiority trial is your sample size will go up and you might not be able to pull off such a trial if you try to do a superiority trial, right? You will need a huge sample size to prove that the new drug is better than your drug, not by chance, right? It will be a big sample size. So non-inferiority trial is an easier trial to do. Does that mean 4.8% and 6.6% are considered to be not significantly different? The answer is yes, they are not significantly different. And that is what I wanted. I want that both the arms, unko single drug mile ya double drug mile, they are not significantly different, is what I wanted to prove, right? Remember what was your null hypothesis? That they are significantly different, that one is inferior to another. Now we have rejected the null hypothesis and said, no, they are not significantly different, they are the same, right? Okay, so with that, I would like to thank all of you. I think I'm done with what I wanted to say. Over to you, Neil and Manali.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir. I would like Manali to take over. Is she here?
Lost connection. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, you're audible. Continue.
Okay. So thank you, sir, for sparing time for us and coming here to guide us on this topic. And I would like to thank Dr. Aarti Kanekar ma'am for always being there for all the events and guiding us through all the events. And I would like to thank our research council and our club team for coming together and putting this event up. Thank you so much.
Thank
I
you. So
hand over to Neerav.
And one more thing, sir, like we have a couple of lectures which are done till date, but none of the lectures were this interactive. And it was really great to see so much of audience joining in. And thank you for actually looking into it and telling us that how such trials can be used in clinical practice. Probably something which requires which is required in today's world. Thank you so much, sir, and have a good day.
thank you so much. Thank you. So
Thank you for the audience. Yes.
this is on my end, so I'll just close the webinar. Thank you so much. Bye bye.